As you know from earlier videos, more than 2,250 British citizens were ordered to leave EU member states between the end of the Brexit transition period and September last year already, according to figures from the Union Statistical Office. And in some of my recent videos, I talked about the numbers all over the EU and in certain countries. But another important topic for British migrants was France. And today I want to go a bit deeper into that topic. As of March 2023, France has issued around 1,800 leave orders to British citizens living in France after Brexit. These orders are known as départ volontaire, which means voluntary departure. They are issued to British citizens who have not complied with the new post-Brexit rules for residency in France. And these rules require British citizens to have a visa or residency permit to live in France. The French government has said that it is issuing the leave orders as a last resort. It has urged British citizens to comply with the new rules and to apply for a visa or residency permit if they want to continue living in France. The leave orders do not mean that the British citizens who have been issued with them will be forced to leave France immediately. They gave a grace period of several months to comply with the rules. However, if they do not comply, they could be fined or even be deported. And there are a few reasons why British citizens have received leave orders from France after Brexit. And these include the failure to apply for a visa or residency permit. As of January 1st, 2021, British citizens who want to live in France for more than 90 days need to apply for a visa or residency permit. Those who do not apply for a visa or residency permit are breaking the law and could be issued with such a leave order. Or they failed to renew their visa or residency permit. British citizens who have a visa or residency permit for France need to renew it before it expires. And those who do not renew their visa or residency permit could also be issued with a leave order. Or, as in any cases we've talked about, they could have committed a crime, because British citizens who commit a crime in France could be issued with a leave order quite quickly. And this is regardless of whether they have a visa or residency permit. But they also might be a threat to public order or national security, because British citizens who are considered to be a threat to public order or national security could also be issued with a leave order. This is a rare occurrence, but it has happened in some cases. The French government has said that it is issuing leave orders as a last resort. I mentioned that earlier. And it has urged British citizens to comply with the new rules and to finally apply for a visa or residency permit if they want to continue living in France. As of March this year, it wasn't clear how many British citizens who have received leave orders from France have actually left the country. The French government has not released any official figures on this. However, there have been some reports that a small number of British citizens have left France after receiving leave orders. It is also possible that some British citizens who have received leave orders have chosen to stay in France illegally. I saw this in the comments as well about Spain. And this is a risky move, as they could be fined or even deported if they are caught, or both because they stayed illegally. And the French government has said that it is committed to be enforcing the new post-Brexit rules for residency in France. It has warned that it will not tolerate British citizens who flout the rules. It is possible that the French government will take further action to crack down on British citizens who are living in France illegally. Only time will tell how many British citizens who have received leave orders will actually leave France. However, it is clear that the French government is serious about enforcing the new rules. There also have residence permits been denied for British citizens by France since Brexit. And I talked about this on others yet. That's why I want to do it on Spain as well. Because there are a few reasons why those have been denied to British citizens by France after Brexit. There might be the failure to meet the requirements for a residence permit. The requirements for a residence permit in France vary depending on the applicant's circumstances, though. However, some common requirements include having a job in France, being self-sufficient, and having a clean criminal record. Submitting an incomplete or incorrect application might be another reason, because the application process for a residence permit in France can be complex. It's important to submit a complete and correct application, as any errors or omissions could result in the application being denied. And of course, having this criminal record. A criminal record can be reason for residence permit being denied in France. This is especially true for serious crimes or crimes that have been committed in France. Or, even in this case, once again, they might be considered a threat to public order or national security. In those rare cases, a residence permit may be denied to a British citizen if they are considered to be a threat to public order or national security. This is a subjective decision that is made by the French authorities. It's important to note that the French government has also not released any official figures on the number of British citizens who have been denied residence permits since Brexit. In other countries, it was much easier to find those numbers. However, there have been some reports that numbers of British citizens had their applications denied. But like in all countries I talked about already, it comes down to the fact in most cases if those Brits lived legally in France before Brexit. And for that, they just had to do the same every EU citizen must do. EU citizens do not need a visa to enter France, but they do need to apply for a residence permit if they want to stay in France for more than 90 days. The residence permit application process, as I said, can be complex, so it's important to start the process early. And there are some documents that EU citizens will need to apply for a residence permit in France. That's a valid passport or a national ID. It's a completed residence permit application form. It's a recent photograph and proof of accommodation in France. Also the proof of financial resources, the proof of health insurance, and a criminal record check. EU citizens can apply for a residency permit at the French embassy or consulate in EU citizens' home countries, or at the prefecture in France. The application process can take several months, so it's important, as I said, to start the process early. Once EU citizens have been granted a residence permit, EU citizens will be able to live and work in France legally, and all this applied to the British before Brexit as well. EU citizens will also be able to access French social benefits such as healthcare and unemployment benefits after that. But there are some additional things to keep in mind when applying for a residence permit in France. So if anybody is still thinking about this, that's why I'm adding this. EU citizens must be able to prove that EU citizens have a genuine link to France. This could include having a job in France, being self-sufficient, or being married to a French citizen. And EU citizens must be able to speak French to a certain level. The exact level of French required will vary depending on EU citizens' circumstances. And the EU citizen must be able to provide proof of health insurance. I said this earlier. And this could be EU citizens' national health insurance or a private health insurance plan. The authority to grant residence permits to EU citizens and their family members lies with the member states, and this was another example where you could see this. Of course, the EU has set some common rules on who is eligible for a residence permit and the conditions that must be met at a minimum. But the EU rules on residence are contained in the Free Movement Directive, which was adopted in 2004, so already applied to the British. The directive sets out the rights of EU citizens and their family members to move and reside freely within the EU. And the directive states that EU citizens have the right to reside in any member state for up to 3 months without any formalities. After 3 months, EU citizens must have a valid reason for their stay, such as employment, studies, or self-employment. And EU citizens who have been living in a member state for 5 years are entitled to permanent residence. And this means that they can stay in the country indefinitely and are entitled to the same rights as nationals of that country. And the family members of EU citizens also have the right to reside in the EU. The directive defines family members as spouses, children, and dependent parents. But the member states are free to set their own rules on the requirements for a residence permit. However, they must comply with the minimum standards set out in the Free Movement Directive. For example, the member states must not require EU citizens to have a job offer before they can apply for a residence permit. And they must also allow EU citizens to bring their family members with them when they move to another member state. And so much about the dictatorship of the EU that's always brought up again by Brexiteers. The member states have the last say on residing in their country. And the EU just set minimum standards and some rights for EU members. But we must never forget, which the Brexiteers always forgot in the campaign, all those rules were made by the member states. And in these cases, by the member states unanimously. So everything the Brexiteers complained about was set up by their own government as well. And so nothing was just set up by the EU and the member states have nothing to do with it. No, that time 28 member states made that rules. But some people are really far away from being able to be cured by facts. They sometimes seem to be allergic to facts, so I can see it in the comments of my videos regularly. And I cannot even follow on how many comments are blocked by YouTube because of their behavior. Yeah, I even can't check all the blocked ones because so many people misbehave that YouTube is blocking so much stuff. It's unbelievable on this topic. But nevertheless, if you want to know more about Brexit or other UK politics, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.